The boardroom fell into absolute silence. 12 executives sat frozen, their faces pale, as the massive presentation screens flickered and died. $300 million, an entire merger that had taken 18 months to negotiate, was about to collapse in the next 4 minutes. The CEO's hands trembled as he stared at the blank monitors. Their entire IT department had failed, the backup systems had failed, everything was gone, and then from the back of the room a quiet voice spoke. "I think I can fix it." Everyone turned. Standing in the doorway, still holding a mop, was the 17-year-old son of the cleaning lady. The same kid they'd walked past 1,000 times without a second glance. What happened in the next 8 minutes would change everything. But to understand how we got here, to this impossible moment, we need to go back 3 months. Back to when Marcus Williams was just another invisible face in the gleaming halls of Titanium Corp, back to before anyone knew his name. Marcus Williams woke up every morning at 4:47 a.m., not 4:45. Not 5:00, exactly 4:47. He'd set his phone alarm 13 minutes early because the apartment building's hot water ran out by 5:15, and if he didn't shower before his mother left for her first cleaning job, he'd be washing with ice-cold water. Again, the apartment was small, a one-bedroom in the Riverside district that they'd been renting for 6 years, ever since his father passed. Marcus slept on the pull-out couch in the living room. It was old, with springs that dug into his back, but he'd learned to sleep at an angle that avoided the worst of them. He was 17, senior year at Washington High. Straight A's, though nobody at school really noticed. He was the quiet kid who sat in the back, always with headphones on during lunch, tapping away at a laptop that was held together with electrical tape and hope. That laptop was his entire world. His mother, Gloria Williams, was already awake when Marcus emerged from the bathroom, dressed in her dark blue cleaning uniform. She was 52 but looked older, the kind of aging that comes from working 3 jobs for 15 years. Her hands were worn, calloused from chemicals and scrubbing. But her smile was warm when she saw her son. "Morning, baby," she said softly, pouring him coffee from the pot she'd already made. "You sleep okay?" "Yeah, Mama." Marcus accepted the mug, their daily ritual. "You heading to Titanium first?" Got the executive floor today. Big presentation happening later this week, so they want everything spotless." She checked her watch, a simple Timex with a cracked face. "You getting to school on time?" "Always do." She studied him for a moment, her eyes carrying that particular weight mothers have when they know their children are carrying burdens they don't talk about. Marcus was brilliant, she knew that. His teachers had been telling her since he was 8 years old that her son had a gift with computers, with mathematics, with problem solving. But gifts didn't pay for college. Scholarships were competitive, and their family had exactly $217 in savings. "You working on that application?" she asked gently. Marcus nodded. MIT, full scholarship or nothing. The essay was due in 2 weeks, and he'd rewritten it 14 times. "How do you explain to an admissions board that you taught yourself programming? Because your school's computer lab had 6 working computers for 300 students. That you'd built your own PC from parts you found at the Electronics Recycling Center. That your greatest achievement was creating a network security protocol that you had no way to actually test, because you'd never even touched enterprise-level systems." "It's coming together," he said, which was half true. Gloria squeezed his shoulder. "You're gonna make it, Marcus." "I know you are." She grabbed her bag, stuffed with cleaning supplies the company didn't provide, and headed for the door. "Lock up behind me, and baby?" "Yeah, don't skip breakfast. There's oatmeal on the stove." The door clicked shut. Marcus stood alone in the silent apartment, coffee growing cold in his hands, staring at his laptop on the kitchen table. He had 43 minutes before he needed to catch the bus. 43 minutes to work on code that might never matter, for a future that felt impossibly far away. But he sat down anyway, opened the laptop, and got to work, because that's what Marcus Williams did every single day, whether anyone was watching or not. Titanium Corporation occupied floors 20 through 35 of the Prescott Tower in downtown Seattle. From the street, the building was all glass and steel, a monument to success, power, and innovation. The company specialized in cybersecurity solutions for Fortune 500 clients, protecting financial institutions, hospitals, and government agencies from digital threats. They employed over 400 people: software engineers, data analysts, project managers, sales executives. The average salary on the technical floors was $180,000 a year. The executive team on floor 35 made considerably more. The cleaning crew was not part of Titanium Corporation. They were contracted through a company called Prestige Cleaning Services, which paid $14.50 an hour with no benefits. Gloria Williams was one of 16 cleaners who cycled through the building on different shifts, invisible to the people who worked there. She'd been cleaning floor 35 for 3 years. In all that time, exactly 4 people had ever learned her name. One was Roger Matthews, the head of security, who was friendly to everyone. One was Patricia Chen, an HR director who made a point of saying good morning. The other 2 had since left the company. To everyone else, Gloria was simply the cleaning lady, sometimes not even that. Just a presence you stepped around in the hallway, a person who emptied your trash and vacuumed your office after you left for the day. The executives didn't mean to be cruel. They were just busy. Important, focused on things that mattered. Marcus had started coming with his mother to Titanium 6 months ago. It wasn't planned. His laptop had died, the hard drive finally giving up after 7 years of constant use, and he couldn't afford a new one. Gloria mentioned it to Patricia Chen during one of their brief conversations, and Patricia had worked some magic with the IT department. They had old equipment being cycled out. Nothing fancy but functional. A desktop computer from 2019 that would have been thrown away otherwise. The catch was Marcus had to pick it up in person, sign some liability forms. So he'd gone with his mother one Saturday, and then he'd kept coming back, because Titanium Corp had something Marcus had never experienced before: unlimited high-speed internet access. Computer labs with actual modern equipment. And if he stayed quiet, kept to the break room on the 23rd floor after hours, nobody seemed to mind that the cleaning lady's kid was sitting in the corner with headphones on, teaching himself advanced cryptography. He became part of the landscape, another invisible presence, the quiet black teenager who sometimes did homework while his mother worked, who never bothered anyone, who might as well have been furniture. People walked past him discussing million-dollar contracts, complaining about system glitches, joking about their clueless IT department. Marcus heard everything, and he never said a word. Richard Blackwell was the chief operating officer of Titanium Corporation. He was 53 years old, Stanford MBA, 27 years in tech, and he carried himself with the supreme confidence of a man who had never been told he was wrong. His suits cost more than Gloria's monthly rent. His watch cost more than Marcus's entire education to date. He was not a cruel man exactly, just unaware. The way people become when they've lived at a certain altitude for so long that they forget there are other levels below. It was a Tuesday evening in late October when Richard Blackwell first truly noticed Marcus Williams. Gloria was vacuuming the executive conference room, a massive space with a mahogany table that could seat 20 floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Seattle skyline, and enough technology embedded in the walls to run a small country. Marcus was in the hallway outside, sitting on the floor with his back against the wall, working on his laptop. He was deep in code, debugging a program he'd been building, a data compression algorithm that he thought might be more efficient than standard protocols. It was probably nothing, but it was his, and that mattered. Richard emerged from his office, jacket off, tie loosened, phone pressed to his ear. He was having a heated conversation with someone about server capacity and expansion timelines. He wasn't watching where he was going. His foot caught Marcus's backpack. Richard stumbled, didn't fall, but it was close. His phone clattered to the marble floor. He spun around, anger flashing across his face. What the hell? He stopped, looked down, saw Marcus frozen mid-keystroke. What are you doing here? Richard's voice was sharp, accusatory. This is an executive floor. You can't just sit here. Marcus pulled his headphones down slowly. I'm sorry, sir. I'm waiting for my mom. She's cleaning the conference room? Richard's eyes flicked to the laptop, to Marcus's worn clothes, to the backpack that had apparently offended him. His expression shifted into something that wasn't quite disgust but was definitely dismissal. "Your mother is the cleaning lady?" "Yes, sir." "Well, you need to wait somewhere else." "This isn't a," he waved his hand vaguely. "A study hall. We have clients on this floor, board members. This is unprofessional." Something in Marcus's chest tightened. But he'd learned long ago how to keep his face neutral. "Where should I wait?" "I don't know, downstairs lobby." "Your mother shouldn't be bringing you to work anyway. The building's locked after 6 p.m. Security won't let me wait in the lobby without an employee escort." Richard sighed, the deep sigh of a man being forced to solve a problem that shouldn't be his responsibility. "Fine. Break room on 23, but keep out of sight. And tell your mother," he caught himself, softened slightly. "Tell her to make sure you're not in the way." "Yes, sir." Richard picked up his phone, checked it for cracks, and walked away without another word. Marcus sat very still for a long moment. Then carefully he packed up his laptop and moved to the break room 2 floors down. Gloria found him there 20 minutes later, sitting in the dark, staring at nothing. "Baby. You okay?" "Yeah." His voice was flat. "Just had to move, someone complained." She didn't ask who, didn't need to. She'd worked in places like this long enough to know how these things went. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It's not your fault, Mama." But the knot in his stomach suggested otherwise. What Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that this small moment of disrespect was just the beginning. That Richard Blackwell's casual dismissal had set something in motion. Because in 3 months, that same man would be standing in front of Marcus, desperate and terrified, with his entire career on the line. And Marcus would have to decide whether mercy was weakness or strength. The weeks that followed established a new pattern. Marcus continued coming with his mother to Titanium Corp 3 evenings a week. But now he stayed exclusively in the 23rd floor break room, out of sight, existing in the margins. He'd arrive at 6:30 p.m. when Gloria's shift started, set up his laptop at the corner table farthest from the door, put in his headphones, and disappear into his work. The break room was rarely used after hours. Occasionally someone would come in for coffee or to heat up leftover dinner, but mostly Marcus was alone. And that was fine. He didn't need company. He needed time. His MIT application was consuming him. The essay, the portfolio of projects. The recommendation letters he was trying to gather from teachers who barely knew him, because he'd never been the type to raise his hand or seek attention. But more than the application, there was the code. Marcus had become obsessed with network security. Not the surface-level stuff, firewalls and antivirus software that any competent IT department handled. Deep security, penetration testing, finding vulnerabilities before the bad guys did. He'd been teaching himself ethical hacking through online courses, YouTube tutorials, forums where actual cybersecurity professionals shared knowledge. And he'd noticed something. Titanium Corporation, a company that sold cybersecurity solutions to major clients, had some serious holes in their own internal network. Nothing catastrophic, but vulnerabilities, outdated protocols. Weak points that someone with skill could potentially exploit. Marcus had discovered them accidentally while using the company Wi-Fi, running diagnostic tests on his own programs. He'd written them down, created a detailed report actually, partly because it seemed important. Mostly because documenting security flaws was exactly the kind of thing that would strengthen his MIT application. But who do you tell? He was a 17-year-old kid who wasn't even supposed to be on this floor, the son of a cleaning lady. The person Richard Blackwell had called unprofessional for simply existing in the hallway. So Marcus kept it to himself, filed the report away, figured someone else would eventually notice. It was mid-November when Marcus had his second encounter with Richard Blackwell. The break room door swung open at 7:47 p.m. Marcus glanced up, expecting to see one of the low-level staff members who sometimes worked late. Instead, Richard walked in, followed by 2 other executives Marcus recognized from the 30th floor. They were in the middle of a heated discussion about an upcoming presentation. "The merger's on shaky ground," one of them was saying. "Davidson Industries is getting cold feet about our security infrastructure." "Our infrastructure is fine," Richard insisted, pouring himself coffee from the industrial pot that had been sitting there for hours. "They're just posturing for better terms." Richard, they hired an outside firm to audit our systems if there are any weaknesses. There aren't. Marcus's fingers had frozen on his keyboard. He was wearing headphones, but no music was playing. They didn't know that. We need to be prepared for hard questions, the third executive said. What if they find something? They won't. Richard's voice was absolutely certain. We have the best IT department in the city. Our systems are locked down. This is what we do. We don't have security problems. Marcus's eyes drifted to his laptop screen, to the report he'd compiled. 23 documented vulnerabilities, ranging from minor to potentially serious. He should say something, but the memory of Richard's dismissal was still fresh. The way he'd looked at Marcus like he was an obstacle, a problem to be moved out of sight. And these were important men discussing important things. They hadn't even acknowledged Marcus's presence. Hadn't glanced his direction once. He was invisible, so Marcus stayed silent, turned back to his code, let the moment pass. The executives left 5 minutes later, still debating strategy, still supremely confident in their impenetrable security. The door swung shut. Marcus sat very still, staring at his screen, wondering if he'd just made a terrible mistake. By early December, the atmosphere at Titanium Corp had shifted. The Davidson Industries merger had become the sole focus of the entire executive team. It was a $300 million deal that would triple the company's market share and establish them as the dominant cybersecurity firm on the West Coast. Everything hinged on a presentation scheduled for December 18th. Davidson's board would be flying in from Boston. 12 executives, their legal team, and a panel of independent auditors who'd been examining titanium systems for weeks. The stakes could not have been higher. Marcus watched the preparations unfold like a distant observer. The 23rd floor break room had windows overlooking an interior atrium, and from his corner table he could see people rushing back and forth with increasing urgency. The energy was different. Stressed, pressured. Gloria felt it too. The cleaning crew had been given extra instructions about maintaining immaculate conditions throughout the building. Everything perfect, her supervisor had said. No excuses. She worked longer hours, came home exhausted. Marcus saw the toll it was taking, the way she winced when she bent down, the medication she took for her back pain increasing from 1 pill to 3. "Mama, you should rest," he told her one night. "Can't, baby, not right now. This merger goes through. Maybe they'll remember we did good work. Maybe there'll be bonuses." She smiled, but it was tired. "Maybe we'll catch a break." Marcus didn't have the heart to tell her that companies like Titanium didn't give bonuses to contract cleaners, that she was invisible to the people making decisions, that her perfect work would be expected and unacknowledged, so he just hugged her and went back to his code. On December 10th, 8 days before the presentation, Marcus witnessed something that made his blood run cold. He was in the break room as usual, working on a practice coding challenge. The door opened. Richard Blackwell entered with a younger man Marcus recognized as Daniel Porter, head of IT operations. They didn't notice Marcus in the corner, or if they did, they didn't care. Daniel looked stressed. "Richard, I'm telling you there's been unusual activity on the network. Nothing major, but what?" Richard's tone was sharp. "Someone's been running diagnostic tests, probing our security protocols. One of our own people." "I don't think so. The signature doesn't match any of our authorized users." Richard set down his coffee mug with force. "You're telling me 8 days before the biggest presentation of our lives that we have a potential security breach?" "I'm not saying breach. I'm saying anomaly. It could be nothing. Could be a glitch in our monitoring software. But I wanted you to know, can you track it? I'm working on it, but if it's someone sophisticated..." "Daniel." Richard's voice dropped low, controlled. "I don't care if it's the goddamn NSA. You find the source, you lock it down, and you do not let this become a problem. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." Davidson's auditors are already looking for reasons to walk away. If they catch wind of any security irregularities, even false alarms, were finished. $300 million evaporates. Jobs are lost, careers end, including yours. Daniel swallowed hard. "Understood." They left. Marcus sat frozen, his heart hammering. The unusual network activity they detected, it was him. His diagnostic tests. He'd been careful, hadn't touched anything sensitive, hadn't tried to access restricted areas. Just routine security scans, the kind that any competent IT department should welcome because they identified weaknesses. But nobody knew it was him. Nobody knew he was trying to help. They thought it was a threat, and now he was trapped. If he came forward, admitted what he'd been doing, they'd see it as confirmation. The cleaning lady's kid messing around on company systems. Never mind that he'd found real vulnerabilities. Never mind that his intentions were pure. They'd see a problem, a liability, a threat to be eliminated. So Marcus did the only thing he could think of. He stopped, shut down all his diagnostic tools, cleared his browser history, wiped any trace of his activity, and prayed they'd assume the anomaly had been nothing. But the universe Marcus was learning had a different plan, because 3 days later, on December 13th, everything started falling apart. The first sign that something was seriously wrong came at 9:32 a.m. on Thursday, December 13th. Marcus was at school, sitting through AP Calculus, when his phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "They let me go." His stomach dropped. He stared at the message, reading it 3 times, hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something different. "What happened?" The reply took 2 minutes. "Boss said titanium complained. Said I brought unauthorized person into building. Security risk. I'm sorry, baby. I tried to explain, but they wouldn't listen." Marcus felt the classroom tilt. This was his fault. His presence, his network activity, the paranoia he'd accidentally triggered. They'd connected dots that shouldn't have been connected. The cleaning lady whose son hung around the building plus mysterious network anomalies equals unacceptable risk. His mother had lost her primary job, the one that paid slightly better than the others. The one with semi-reliable hours. Because of him, "I'm so sorry, Mama, not your fault. We'll figure it out." But it was his fault, and they both knew it. Marcus couldn't focus for the rest of the day. He moved through his classes like a ghost, the guilt crushing his chest, making it hard to breathe. By the time he got home, Gloria was already gone, at her second job, cleaning office buildings downtown. She'd left a note on the kitchen table. "Don't worry. Love you. Leftovers in fridge." Marcus stared at the note, at his mother's careful handwriting, at the brave face she was putting on even though he knew she had to be terrified. They had $217 in savings. Rent was $1,350 due in 2 weeks. Without the titanium job, they were about $600 short. He picked up his phone, opened his MIT application, stared at the essay he'd been refining for months. Describe a challenge you faced and how you overcame it. The bitter irony wasn't lost on him. December 14th, 4 days before the presentation, Marcus made a decision. He was going to fix this. Not for himself, it was too late for that, but for his mother. She'd been fired because Titanium Corp was paranoid about security threats. Well, Marcus was going to prove they had real reasons to be paranoid. He was going to finish his security audit, document every vulnerability, create an ironclad report. And he was going to deliver it to someone who'd actually listen. Not Richard Blackwell, not the executives who saw him as invisible at best, suspicious at worst. Patricia Chen, the HR director who'd helped him get the computer, who'd remembered his mother's name. It was a long shot, but it was something. Marcus spent 3 days working nonstop. He barely slept. Skipped meals. His mother thought he was studying for finals. Not technically a lie, since his actual finals were happening simultaneously, though he was putting significantly less effort into those. The security report grew. 23 vulnerabilities became 41 as he dug deeper. Some were minor, some were serious, and three were genuinely dangerous. The kind of weaknesses that a sophisticated attacker could exploit to access sensitive client data. The kind of weaknesses that, if discovered during Davidson Industries' audit, would absolutely kill the merger. Marcus compiled everything: technical details, proof of concept, recommended fixes. He made it professional, thorough, undeniable. On December 17th, the day before the presentation, he printed the report at his school library, 47 pages. He put it in a manila envelope, wrote Patricia Chen's name on it, and took the bus downtown. He couldn't enter Titanium Corp. His mother didn't work there anymore, and he certainly didn't have clearance. But the building had a main reception desk on the ground floor. Marcus walked in at 5:47 p.m., envelope in hand. The security guard at the desk looked up. It was Roger Matthews, the one person who'd always been friendly to Gloria. "Hey, Marcus," Roger said, surprised. "Didn't expect to see you." "Your mom's not. I know, I have something for someone on the executive floor." He held up the envelope. "Patricia Chen, HR Director, can you make sure she gets this?" Roger hesitated. "What is it?" "Just something she needs to see. It's important." The guard studied him for a long moment. Marcus held his gaze, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "All right," Roger finally said, taking the envelope. "I'll get it to her office." "Thank you." Marcus left, walked 3 blocks, found a bench, sat down, and waited for the world to either notice him or prove, once and for all, that he didn't matter. What Marcus didn't know was that his envelope never reached Patricia Chen. Roger Matthews, following protocol, had opened it to check the contents, standard procedure for any unsolicited deliveries to executive floors. He'd seen technical jargon, network diagrams, references to security vulnerabilities, and he'd panicked, because the one thing security guards are trained to recognize is potential threats. And an unexpected package containing detailed analysis of company security systems, delivered by the son of a recently fired cleaning lady. That looked like a threat. Roger didn't call Patricia Chen. He called his supervisor, who called the head of security, who called Richard Blackwell. By 7:15 p.m. on December 17th, 16 hours before the presentation, Richard Blackwell was sitting in a conference room with Marcus's report spread out in front of him. Daniel Porter sat across from him, face pale as he read through the technical details. Daniel's voice was shaky. "This is bad, Richard. How bad? Some of this is legitimate. Real vulnerabilities in our systems. Whoever wrote this knows what they're talking about. The cleaning lady's son wrote this? Apparently." Richard's jaw clenched. "That kid. The one who was sitting in the hallway, on our network, running diagnostic tests. Looks like it. So we have a 17-year-old who's been probing our security, documenting our weaknesses. And now he's distributing reports about our vulnerabilities the day before the biggest presentation of our lives." Daniel said nothing. Richard stood up, paced. His mind was racing. "Davidson's team will be here in 14 hours. If they find out some random kid identified flaws in our systems, flaws we didn't catch ourselves, we're done. We look incompetent. The merger dies." "We could fix the issues," Daniel offered weakly. "In 14 hours, while simultaneously preparing for a presentation. We could." "No," Richard's voice was cold, decisive. "This report doesn't exist. Nobody sees it. Nobody knows about it. We present tomorrow exactly as planned, and afterwards we fix whatever needs fixing. Richard, some of these vulnerabilities are serious, and they'll be serious next week too. But if we start scrambling now, changing systems, running emergency patches, someone will notice. Someone will ask questions, and this whole thing unravels." Daniel looked sick. "You want to hide this. I want to protect $300 million and 400 jobs, including yours." Richard picked up the envelope. "This report came from a kid with a grudge whose mother just got fired. For all we know, he's making half of it up. Or worse, he's the actual threat, and this is his way of bragging about what he found before he exploits it. You think he'd? I think we can't afford to find out. Tomorrow we present. We dazzle Davidson Industries. We close this deal, and then we deal with the kid." By 9:00 p.m., Marcus still hadn't heard anything. No call, no email, nothing. He sat in the apartment, laptop open, refreshing his inbox every 3 minutes, wondering if Patricia Chen had even received the report, wondering if anyone cared. His mother came home at 9:43, exhausted from her shift. She found him at the kitchen table, staring at his screen. "You okay, baby?" "Yeah, just waiting on something." She kissed his forehead. "Don't stay up too late. You got school tomorrow." "I know." But Marcus didn't sleep that night. He lay on the pull-out couch, staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios. Best case, they'd read his report, realize he was trying to help, thank him, maybe even offer him an internship. Worst case, they'd ignored it completely. What he never imagined, what he couldn't possibly have conceived, was that he'd inadvertently painted himself as a threat. That right now, executives were discussing whether to file a police report. That his attempt to help had been interpreted as something darker. Tomorrow was December 18th, the day everything would change. And Marcus Williams, lying awake in the dark, had no idea that in less than 12 hours, he would walk into a situation that would test everything he believed about himself. December 18th began like any other day. Marcus's alarm went off at 4:47 a.m. He showered, dressed, ate oatmeal alone while his mother prepared for her shift at the downtown office building. "You seem tired," Gloria observed. "You sleeping okay? Just stressed about finals," he lied. She studied him with that particular mother's intuition that sees through everything but chooses battles carefully. "You push yourself too hard sometimes." "I'm fine, Mama." She didn't argue. Just kissed his cheek and left for work. Marcus caught the bus to school at 6:23 a.m. AP Chemistry first period, then English, then a free period where he normally worked in the library. But today, Marcus couldn't focus. He kept checking his phone, nothing from Patricia Chen. Nothing from anyone at Titanium Corp. His report had vanished into a void. By lunch, he'd made a decision. School ended at 2:35. He could catch the bus downtown, get to Titanium Corp. By 3:30, find Patricia Chen directly. No intermediaries, just walk in and ask. It was a terrible plan. He had no access. No appointment, no real reason they'd let him pass security, but doing nothing felt worse. At 2:47 p.m., Marcus stepped off the bus 3 blocks from Prescott Tower. It was cold, Seattle winter, the kind that seeps into your bones. He pulled his jacket tighter and walked toward the gleaming building where his mother had worked, where he'd spent so many evenings invisible in the corners. He reached the lobby at 3:04 p.m. And that's when he saw them. A crowd of people in expensive suits filing out of elevators. Executives from Titanium Corp mixed with unfamiliar faces. The Davidson Industries team, Marcus realized. The merger presentation must have just ended. They looked tense, serious, not celebrating. Marcus hung back by the entrance watching. Roger Matthews was at the security desk, coordinating guest badges being returned. Other security personnel were positioned throughout the lobby. Then Richard Blackwell emerged from the elevator. He was on his phone, his face flushed with barely controlled anger. Marcus could hear fragments of conversation. "Don't care what the preliminary assessment says. Fix it." "No, we can't delay." Richard ended the call, turned, and locked eyes with Marcus across the lobby. For 3 seconds, neither moved. Then Richard's expression shifted, recognition. Then something darker, anger, accusation. He started walking toward Marcus with purpose. Marcus's heart hammered, every instinct screamed to run, but he'd come here for a reason. "You," Richard's voice was low, controlled, but shaking with fury. "You have some nerve showing up here." "I wanted to talk to Patricia Chen," Marcus said quietly. "About the report I know about your report, the one where you documented our security vulnerabilities. The one you somehow compiled after spending weeks illegally accessing our network." "I wasn't illegal. I was using the Wi-Fi I had permission to." "You had permission to do homework. Not to hack our systems." People were starting to stare, other executives pausing their conversations to watch the confrontation. Marcus felt his face burning. "I wasn't hacking. I was running standard diagnostic tests. I found problems and I tried to report them." "Oh, you found problems?" Richard's voice dripped with sarcasm. "A 17-year-old kid with what credentials exactly? What training? What authority? I don't need credentials to see vulnerabilities. You need to leave now. Before I call the police and have you arrested for unauthorized access to private systems." The lobby had gone completely quiet. Marcus stood frozen. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. He'd been trying to help. He'd documented real issues. But standing here in this moment with dozens of powerful people staring at him like he was a criminal, he felt small, young, powerless. "I'm sorry," Marcus heard himself say. "I didn't mean to." "I don't care what you meant." Richard gestured to security. "Roger, escort him out, and he's not allowed back in this building." Roger Matthews looked uncomfortable but approached slowly. "Come on, Marcus, let's—" And then from behind Richard, a new voice cut through the tension. "Wait!" Everyone turned. A woman in her 60s, silver hair pulled back, wearing an immaculate gray suit, stepped forward from the Davidson Industries group. Her expression was sharp, intelligent, curious. "I'm sorry," she said, addressing Richard but looking at Marcus. "Did you say this young man wrote a security report about your systems?" Richard's jaw tightened. "It's a misunderstanding." The son of a former employee trying to— "I'd like to see that report." "Excuse me." The woman extended her hand to Marcus. Catherine Davidson, CEO of Davidson Industries. You wrote a security analysis of Titanium Corp's network. Marcus's throat was dry. Yes, ma'am. May I see it? I left a copy with security, but... Richard, Catherine turned to the COO. Do you have this report? Richard's face had gone pale. Mrs. Davidson, this isn't. The presentation just concluded successfully. There's no need to, Mr. Blackwell, my company is about to invest $300 million in a merger with your organization, specifically because of your cybersecurity expertise. If there's a security report written by anyone, regardless of age, that identifies vulnerabilities in your systems, I absolutely need to see it. It's not legitimate, Richard insisted. A kid with a grudge making things up. Then you should have no problem showing me the report and explaining why it's not legitimate. Silence. Marcus watched Richard Blackwell's face cycle through emotions. Anger, fear, calculation. Of course, Richard finally said. It's in my office. I can have it brought down. I'll come with you, Catherine said smoothly. Then to Marcus. You too, young man. The elevator ride to the 35th floor was excruciating. Marcus stood in the corner, trying to make himself smaller. Richard Blackwell stood rigid, staring straight ahead. Catherine Davidson watched them both with the calm assessment of someone who'd spent decades reading people and situations. 3 other Davidson executives had joined them. All wearing expressions of careful neutrality, nobody spoke. The elevator dinged, doors opened. They walked through the executive floor, the same hallways where Marcus had been told he was unprofessional for simply existing. Past the conference room his mother had cleaned countless times. Into Richard's corner office. It was impressive, floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture. Walls covered with awards and photos of Richard with various tech industry celebrities. Richard went to his desk, retrieved the manila envelope, handed it to Catherine with visible reluctance. She opened it, began reading. Marcus stood near the door, acutely aware that he was wearing a thrift store jacket and sneakers with duct tape on the sole. That he was 17. That everyone in this room could destroy his future with a single phone call. Catherine read for 3 minutes, then looked up. This is quite detailed, she said evenly. These vulnerabilities, are they accurate? We'd need our IT department to verify, Richard began. I'm asking if they're accurate, Richard hesitated. Some of the identified issues may have merit, but may have merit. Catherine closed the report, looked directly at Marcus. How did you identify these vulnerabilities? Marcus's voice came out stronger than he expected. Standard penetration testing protocols. I ran diagnostic scans on the network while using their Wi-Fi. Most of what I found are configuration issues or outdated security patches. Nothing catastrophic, but definitely exploitable by someone with moderate skill. And you documented all of this. Why? Because I wanted to help. I saw weaknesses and I thought someone should know. Why not report them immediately? Marcus glanced at Richard. I tried. I left this report yesterday for someone in HR, but I guess, he looked back at Catherine, I guess it got misinterpreted. Misinterpreted how? Richard spoke up quickly. We've been dealing with suspicious network activity. When a report about our security appeared from an unauthorized user. An unauthorized user, Catherine repeated slowly, who identified legitimate vulnerabilities in your systems. Vulnerabilities that your own IT department apparently missed. Our systems are secure, are they? Catherine opened the report again. Because according to this, you have 3 critical vulnerabilities that could allow unauthorized access to client databases. One of which involves outdated encryption protocols that were compromised 6 months ago. She looked up. We store medical records for 400,000 patients in databases you manage, Mr. Blackwell. If this is accurate, that data is at risk. The room was completely silent. Marcus could see Richard's hands trembling slightly. We can verify and patch these issues immediately, Richard said. This doesn't change the strength of our overall. It changes everything, Catherine interrupted quietly. My auditors spent 3 weeks examining your systems. They found nothing. This young man spent a few hours and found 41 issues. Do you understand what that tells me about your internal security oversight? She closed the report. Looked at Marcus with genuine curiosity. How old are you? 17, ma'am. Where did you learn to do this? Online courses, forums, practice. No formal training? No, ma'am, Catherine turned to one of her executives. James, get Daniel Porter up here. I want verification on these vulnerabilities within the hour. Then, to Richard, we're pausing the merger discussions until we complete a full security review. Richard's face went ashen. Mrs. Davidson, that's not necessary. It absolutely is necessary, and if we find that these vulnerabilities are real and you attempted to hide them. She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. She turned back to Marcus. You, she said, not unkindly, stay here. I have questions for you. What happened over the next 6 hours would be remembered at Titanium Corp for years to come. Daniel Porter was summoned. The IT team was mobilized. Davidson's technical experts were brought in. And Marcus, sitting in an executive conference room with a bottle of water someone had given him, still wearing his duct-taped sneakers, walked them through his report, line by line, vulnerability by vulnerability, and they verified every single one. The outdated encryption protocols, real. The configuration errors allowing potential unauthorized access, real. The weak authentication system that could be bypassed with moderate effort, real. By 7:00 p.m., Catherine Davidson had made several decisions. First, the merger was suspended indefinitely pending a complete security overhaul. Second, Titanium Corp's IT department would be restructured. Third, Richard Blackwell would be placed on administrative leave, while an investigation determined whether he'd intentionally concealed known security issues. And fourth, she wanted to speak with Marcus Williams privately. The conference room was empty except for Marcus and Catherine. She sat across from him, having removed her suit jacket, looking tired but sharp. You have a gift, she said simply. Marcus didn't know how to respond to that. How did you really learn to do this? She asked. And I want the real answer. So Marcus told her about the broken laptop and the free Wi-Fi. About teaching himself from YouTube videos and online forums. About the school with 6 working computers for 300 students. About his mother working 3 jobs. About MIT and the scholarship he probably wouldn't get because how do you prove you're brilliant when you've never had access to the resources that let brilliance flourish? Catherine listened. Didn't interrupt. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Your mother, she said finally. Gloria Williams, she was the cleaning lady here. Yes, ma'am. She was fired because of you. Because they thought you were a security threat. Marcus's throat tightened. Yes, ma'am. Do you know where she is now? Working, downtown office building. Catherine nodded slowly. Made a note on her phone. Then she looked at Marcus with an expression he couldn't quite read. What you did was reckless, she said. Running unauthorized tests on a company network. You could have caused serious damage. I know, I'm sorry. But you didn't cause damage. You found damage that already existed. And instead of exploiting it or ignoring it, you tried to report it. She leaned forward. Do you know how rare that is? How many people would have used that information for personal gain, sold it? Used it to hack in and steal data? I wouldn't do that. I know, that's what makes you special. She stood up, extended her hand. I'm offering you an internship, Marcus. Summer position with Davidson Industries Cybersecurity Division. Paid, full mentorship. And if you're as good as I think you are, we'll sponsor your education. Any school you want. Marcus stared at her hand, couldn't quite process what he was hearing. But, his voice cracked, I almost ruined your merger. You probably saved my company millions of dollars in future security breaches. You did exactly what someone with integrity does when they see a problem. She smiled slightly. Though next time maybe go through official channels. Marcus took her hand, shook it, felt tears threatening and fought them back. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you, now go home, rest. I'll be in touch. He turned to leave, got to the door, stopped. Mrs. Davidson? Yes, my mother, Gloria, she didn't do anything wrong. I know, She's been trying so hard to give me opportunities, and she lost her job because Marcus, Catherine's voice was gentle. Your mother isn't going to work in office cleaning anymore. I'm going to make a call. She'll have a position in Davidson Industries Facilities Management Department. Better pay, benefits, full-time if she wants it. The tears won. Marcus nodded, unable to speak, and left before he completely broke down. The story of what happened on December 18th spread through Titanium Corp like wildfire. By morning of December 19th, everyone knew. The cleaning lady's son, the security report, the suspended merger, Richard Blackwell on administrative leave. But what the rumors didn't capture, what nobody outside that conference room could fully understand, was what happened next. Because the real turn didn't happen in that executive meeting. It happened 2 hours later at 9:13 p.m. in an empty break room on the 23rd floor. Marcus had stayed after Catherine Davidson left, partially because he was in shock. Partially because he didn't trust his legs to carry him to the bus stop without collapsing. He was sitting at his usual table, the corner spot where he'd spent so many evenings invisible, when he heard footsteps. Richard Blackwell walked in. Marcus stood up immediately, fight-or-flight instinct kicking in. But Richard looked different. His tie was loosened. His face was haggard. He looked like a man who'd aged 10 years in 6 hours. "Sit down," Richard said quietly. "Please." Marcus hesitated, then sat. Richard moved to the coffee maker, poured 2 cups, brought one to Marcus, set it down. "I owe you an apology," Richard said. Marcus stared at him. "I treated you like you didn't matter, like you were invisible. Worse than that, I treated you like a threat when you were trying to help." Richard sat down heavily. "And because of my arrogance, I almost destroyed this company and my career. I didn't mean to. You didn't do anything wrong." Richard's voice was firm. "You saw problems and you tried to report them. I was the one who turned your help into a crisis because I was too proud to listen." He was quiet for a moment, staring at his coffee. "Do you know what's going to happen to me?" Richard asked. Marcus shook his head. "Internal investigation, probably a forced resignation, at minimum a demotion. My reputation in the industry is finished." He laughed bitterly. "And the worst part, I deserve it, all of it. I didn't want. I know you didn't. But I need you to understand something, Marcus." Richard looked at him directly. "You were right about the vulnerabilities, about the weaknesses in our security, and I knew there were issues. I'd seen some of them, but I buried them because I was focused on the merger, on the money, on looking good." He set down his coffee. "I forgot that the whole point of what we do, cybersecurity, is protecting people, protecting data, being honest about weaknesses so they can be fixed. I turned it into theater, appearances. And you, a 17-year-old kid with a laptop held together with tape, remembered what actually matters." Marcus didn't know what to say. "Catherine Davidson offered you an internship, didn't she?" Richard asked. "Yes, sir. Take it. You're better than anyone in my IT department. Better than most people I've met in 20 years in this industry." He stood up. "And Marcus?" "Yes, sir. I'm sorry for all of it, for how I treated you, for how I treated your mother. For being so blind that I couldn't see what was right in front of me." Richard extended his hand. Marcus looked at it, then up at Richard's face. Saw genuine remorse there, genuine recognition. He took the hand, shook it. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly. Richard nodded, and left. Marcus sat alone in the break room, coffee growing cold in front of him, trying to process everything. 6 hours ago, he'd been escorted toward the exit by security, humiliated in front of dozens of people. Now he had an internship, a scholarship offer. His mother had a better job. And Richard Blackwell, the man who dismissed him as unprofessional, who tried to have him arrested, had just apologized. The story should end there. It would be neat, satisfying. The underdog vindicated, the powerful humbled, justice served. But life rarely wraps up that cleanly. What happened over the next 2 weeks was messy, complicated, and ultimately more interesting than any simple narrative of revenge or triumph. Marcus was back at school, sitting in AP English, when he got called to the principal's office. He walked there with mild dread, wondering what fresh catastrophe had emerged. Instead, he found Principal Morrison smiling. "Marcus, you have a visitor." Catherine Davidson was sitting in the office, looking completely out of place but entirely comfortable. "I wanted to tell you in person," she said after the principal tactfully left. "We completed our security review of Titanium Corp systems. You identified 41 vulnerabilities." "We found 63. Marcus's eyes widened. "Your analysis was excellent, but you only had access to surface-level systems. When we went deeper," she shook her head. "It's worse than anyone thought. What does that mean for the merger?" "It means we're going through with it, but under completely different terms. Titanium Corp needs our help. They have the client relationships and market presence, but their security infrastructure is fundamentally compromised. We're essentially acquiring them and rebuilding from the ground up. And Richard Blackwell? Resigned yesterday. He'll land somewhere else eventually. Men like that usually do. But not here. Catherine pulled out a folder. I have employment contracts for you and your mother. Standard terms for the internship, plus housing stipend if you relocate to Boston for MIT. Which, she smiled. I made a call to their admissions department, explained your situation. Sent them your security report as a portfolio piece. You didn't have to. Marcus, top universities compete for students like you. They just don't always know you exist because you're not at schools with college counselors and networking connections. All I did was make an introduction. She handed him the folder. Your mother's contract is in here too. Facilities Management Coordinator. Salary starts at $62,000 with full benefits. She can work remotely part-time if needed for your school schedule. Marcus opened the folder with shaking hands, saw numbers that looked like a different life. Why, he asked quietly. Why are you doing all this? Catherine was quiet for a moment. When I was 23, she said finally, I was working as a secretary at a tech startup. I'd taught myself programming on nights and weekends, built some software that improved our inventory system. My boss took credit for it, got promoted. Took the work of a woman he saw as disposable and used it to advance his career. She looked at Marcus directly. Someone, a senior executive who'd been watching, pulled me aside. Told me what really happened, offered me a position in his division, mentored me, changed my entire trajectory. She smiled slightly. I've spent 30 years paying that forward. Finding talented people who get overlooked, making sure they get chances. I don't know what to say. Say you'll work hard. Say you'll remember this when you're successful and someone else needs a chance. That's how this works. December 23rd. Marcus returned to Titanium Corp one final time, not to work. Just to collect his mother's personal items from her locker. The building felt different now. The massive lobby, the gleaming floors, the sense of intimidating prestige, it all felt somehow smaller. More human, Roger Matthews was at the security desk. He smiled when he saw Marcus. Heard about the internship, Roger said. Congratulations. Thank you for helping. For trying to get my report to the right person. Roger looked uncomfortable. I'm the one who flagged it as a potential threat. I'm sorry about that. You were doing your job. Still. I should have seen, he trailed off. Your mom's locker is on sublevel 2. I'll walk you down. They took the service elevator. Walked through concrete hallways Marcus had never seen before. The infrastructure of the building, where cleaners and maintenance staff moved invisibly while executives worked above. Gloria's locker was in a row of identical metal compartments. Marcus opened it with the key she'd given him. Inside, a spare uniform, a pair of worn shoes. A small framed photo of Marcus at his 8th grade graduation, a bag of cough drops, a small bottle of hand lotion. This was it. 3 years of work at Titanium Corp, reduced to items that fit in a grocery bag. Marcus carefully packed everything. Was about to close the locker when he noticed something tucked in the back corner. A note in his mother's handwriting. When I feel tired, I think about my son. When I feel invisible, I remember that he sees me. When I wonder if this matters, I know that I'm building his future. Every day, every shift, that's enough. Marcus read it 3 times, felt his chest constrict. His mother had spent years being invisible so that he wouldn't be. And now, because of her sacrifice, because she'd pushed him to learn, to grow, to believe he could be more than circumstances suggested, both their lives were changing. You okay? Roger asked quietly. Marcus folded the note carefully, put it in his pocket. Yeah, he said, I'm okay. December 24th, Christmas Eve, the apartment felt different with hope in it. Gloria was cooking dinner, not the carefully budgeted meals they usually managed, but actual holiday food. Ham, fresh vegetables, pie from the bakery down the street. She'd started her new job on December 21st. 3 days in and she was already different, standing straighter, smiling more. The weight of constant financial terror had lifted just enough to let her breathe. Marcus watched her move around the small kitchen humming to herself and felt gratitude so intense it was almost painful. Mama, he said. She turned. I need to tell you something. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, I need you to know that everything that happened, the internship, your job, all of it, that's because of you. Gloria wiped her hands on a towel, came to sit next to him. Baby, that's because of you. Your talent, your hard work. But you made it possible. Every night you worked late so I could have time to study. Every time you didn't buy something you needed so I could have a laptop. Every time you believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. His voice cracked. You were invisible to them, but you've always been everything to me. She pulled him into a hug. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. We did this together, she finally whispered. We're going to keep doing it together. Christmas Day. Marcus's phone buzzed with an email at 9:47 a.m. From Massachusetts Institute of Technology Admissions, subject. Early acceptance notification. His hands shook as he opened it. Dear Marcus Williams, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted to MIT's class of 2030 with a full scholarship package. He read the email 3 times. Then walked into the kitchen where his mother was making coffee. Mama, I got in. She turned slowly. Got in where? MIT, full scholarship. The mug slipped from her hands. Shattered on the floor, neither of them noticed. Gloria's hand went to her mouth, tears spilled over. You did it, she whispered. We did it. They stood in the small kitchen of their small apartment, surrounded by years of struggle and sacrifice and dignity maintained against impossible odds. And they held each other while the coffee spread across the linoleum, and the morning light came through the window, and the future, the beautiful, terrifying, possible future, opened up before them. January 15th. Marcus returned to Titanium Corp., now officially acquired by Davidson Industries and rebranded as Titanium Davidson Security Solutions. He wasn't there to work. His internship wouldn't start until June, but Catherine Davidson had requested his presence at a company-wide meeting. The auditorium was packed. 400 employees, all wondering what new changes were coming. Marcus sat in the back row, trying to be invisible out of habit. Catherine took the stage. 3 weeks ago, she began, this company was hours away from the biggest deal in its history. That deal fell apart, not because of market conditions, not because of finances, but because we discovered critical security vulnerabilities in our own systems. The room was silent. Those vulnerabilities were identified by a 17-year-old who had access to nothing but public Wi-Fi and extraordinary talent, while our entire IT department missed them. While our executives ignored warning signs, while we were so focused on appearances that we forgot about substance. She paused. That young man is here today. Marcus Williams, can you stand up? Every cell in Marcus's body screamed to refuse, but he stood. 400 faces turned to look at him. Marcus was treated as invisible by this company, dismissed. His mother was fired because we saw them as a security risk instead of recognizing what they actually were, 2 people trying to survive and help where they could. Catherine's voice was firm. This company is changing. We're implementing new policies, new oversight, new values. And part of that change means recognizing that talent and integrity don't always come in the packages we expect. She gestured to Marcus. This young man will be interning with us this summer. I expect you to treat him with respect, to learn from him, to remember that the best solutions often come from people who see clearly precisely because they haven't been blinded by success and comfort. She looked directly at Marcus. Thank you for having the courage to speak up, even when nobody was listening. The applause started slowly, then grew. 400 people, executives and engineers and administrative staff, standing and clapping for the kid who'd been invisible. Marcus felt tears threatening again, but this time he didn't fight them. February 3rd, Marcus's last week before starting at MIT. He was in the 23rd floor break room, his spot, the corner table, when Daniel Porter walked in, the former head of IT operations. The man who'd been demoted after the security scandal but kept on in a reduced role. Daniel poured coffee, then hesitantly approached Marcus's table. Mind if I sit? Marcus gestured to the chair. They sat in awkward silence for a moment. I was angry at you, Daniel finally said. For a while, angry that a kid made me look incompetent. Marcus said nothing, but you didn't make me incompetent. You just revealed that I already was. Daniel took a breath. I got comfortable, stopped learning, stopped challenging myself, figured I knew everything I needed to know. He looked at Marcus. You reminded me that this field never stops evolving, that the second you think you're an expert, you're already obsolete. He extended his hand. Thank you, genuinely. Marcus shook it. What are you going to do now? Marcus asked. Taking some courses, updating my skills. Catherine Davidson offered me a chance to rebuild my career if I put in the work. He smiled slightly. Turns out humility is a decent teacher. March 12th, Marcus's first day at MIT. The campus was overwhelming. Historic buildings and cutting-edge facilities and people who looked like they'd been coding since birth. Marcus felt out of place, small, intimidated. He was assigned to a dorm room with two other first years, both from private schools, both with impressive resumes. They introduced themselves, made small talk. Asked Marcus where he went to high school. Washington High in Seattle, he said. Never heard of it. Is that private? Public? Oh, a pause. Cool. Marcus could see them categorizing him. Trying to figure out how he'd gotten in, what his angle was. That night, lying in bed in a room that still didn't feel like his, Marcus pulled out his phone, opened his messages. Found the thread with his mother. You okay, baby? He smiled. Yeah, Mama, I'm okay. It's scary, but I'm okay. You belong there. Don't forget that. I won't. Proud of you every day. Marcus put the phone down, stared at the ceiling of his new room in his new life, and thought about the break room at Titanium Corp, the corner table. The years of being invisible. He'd never be invisible again, but he'd never forget what it felt like, and that, he was starting to understand, might be his greatest gift. The story of Marcus Williams and Titanium Corporation became something of a legend in the cybersecurity world. Not because a teenager had found vulnerabilities. Talented young hackers exist everywhere. But because of what happened after. Because Marcus chose dignity over revenge, chose to help rather than exploit, chose to stay silent under pressure and speak up only when it mattered. Because Gloria Williams had spent years being invisible so her son could be seen. Because Catherine Davidson remembered what it felt like to be overlooked and used her power to change someone's trajectory. Because Richard Blackwell, in his moment of greatest failure, chose to apologize rather than deflect. Because even Daniel Porter found his way back to humility and growth. The story reminds us of something essential, that intelligence without character is dangerous, but character without opportunity is tragic. Marcus had both. But he almost didn't get the chance to prove it. How many other Marcus Williamses are out there? How many brilliant minds are sitting in corners, invisible, waiting for someone to notice? How many people work jobs that make them feel disposable while carrying gifts the world desperately needs? The answer is, too many. We build systems that reward visibility over substance. That confuse credentials with capability. That see people like Gloria Williams as interchangeable rather than as individuals carrying the weight of love and sacrifice. And we almost missed Marcus entirely. If he'd been less persistent, less courageous, less willing to keep trying when everyone dismissed him, the vulnerabilities would have remained. The merger would have happened. And eventually, when the security failures became catastrophic, hundreds of thousands of people's data would have been compromised. All because nobody was willing to listen to someone they'd decided didn't matter. The lesson isn't just about respecting people. It's about the cost of not respecting them. The opportunities we lose. The disasters we fail to prevent. The solutions that never surface because we've made someone invisible. Dignity isn't just a moral virtue. It's practical, essential, protective. When we treat people as if they matter, all people regardless of their position or background, we create space for truth, for innovation, for the kind of unexpected brilliance that comes from perspectives we haven't considered. Marcus Williams saw what the experts missed because he wasn't blinded by success. Gloria Williams raised a son who could change the world because she refused to let circumstances define his worth. And Catherine Davidson changed multiple lives because she remembered her own invisible years. This is how systems improve, not through grand proclamations or diversity initiatives that check boxes. Through individual moments of recognition, of listening, of believing that the quiet voice in the corner might be saying something essential. Marcus graduated from MIT 4 years later with a degree in computer science and a job offer from every major tech company. He chose to work at Davidson Industries. Chose to stay close to the woman who'd given him his first real chance. Gloria retired at 60, comfortably. Her son bought her a house with a garden. She finally had time to rest. Richard Blackwell eventually found work at a smaller firm, never regained his former status. But by most accounts, he became a better leader, humbler, more willing to listen. The security vulnerabilities at Titanium Davidson were fixed. The merger saved both companies. And on the 23rd floor break room, they installed a small plaque at the corner table. Some of the best ideas come from the quietest voices. It's still there. And occasionally, late at night, you'll find someone sitting at that table. An intern, a junior developer, someone just starting out, working on something they believe in, hoping someone will notice. Usually someone does. If this story reminded you that talent and integrity can exist anywhere, that the people we overlook might be the ones we need most, consider subscribing to this channel. These are the stories that matter, stories about dignity, about justice, about the quiet moments that change everything. Because somewhere right now there's another Marcus Williams, another Gloria. Another person being treated as invisible when they should be seen, and their story deserves to be told. But this account of unexpected vindication is nothing compared to what happened when a homeless veteran walked into a tech startup and did something that left the CEO speechless. What he revealed about his past, well, that's a story that'll make this one look simple. Until next time.